My name's David Crocker. I have a rather interesting hobby of collecting a lot of militaria. I brought in Fred Publicover's collection. In this collection is a picture of him. There's his medals, there's his death certificate, and there's also a certificate of his service there as well.
The number of deaths resulting from the Great War, including civilians caught in the crossfire, totaled nearly 40 million. While civilian deaths are harder to estimate, it is believed to be around 13 million. To notify families of their loss, a telegram was dispatched by a country's government or war correspondents. Medals earned, photos, and other commemorative items would then follow, which for members of the British Empire included a large circular bronze medallion. This next of kin memorial plaque featured the name of the fallen but withheld rank as a demonstration of equality across sacrifice. Circumstances surrounding the plaque's issue led to macabre nicknames like the Dead Man's Penny, the Widow's Penny, the Death Plaque, and the Death Penny. In total, a staggering 1,355,000 plaques were issued between 1914 and 1918.
Dave, welcome to Militaria.
Oh, thank you.
Why don't you tell us what you've brought for us today?
Well, today I brought in a collection that belonged to Fred Publicover. I have a picture of Fred here when he enlisted along with his next door neighbor, Dewey. He unfortunately was killed, so I have his memorial coin. I have his medals, and I have the card that came back to his mother that has a picture of his grave and its location in the card.
So, Dave, why don't you tell us how you came across these items?
Well, I have a exhibit in the shopping center in Bridgewater, and the lady came in with the collection in a box and Fred's picture that hung in the house, and she said that she really didn't have anyone to leave it to. And she asked if I was willing to take it and put it in my display. And I quite gratefully took the items and plan to keep Fred's memory alive.
Wow, that's great. As you know, Dave, Fred Publicover, who was young, had a chance to join the military. At that time in Canada, it was a very rural place. You know, the chance to get out, see the world, was the lure for a lot of young men. It was a chance for Canadians to show their patriotism. And at that time, patriotism was very important. And a lot of people don't understand that Canada was an all-volunteer force up until 1917. But up until that time, everyone that was fighting on the front lines was a volunteer. And a lot of people don't understand that.
That duty to empire, to king, to country was very important to all of them. Like Dewey ended up with the 85th Battalion. So the 85th were renowned for taking Hill 145 at Vimy Ridge.
Yep.
Vimy Ridge was the defining time where the whole Canadian Army came together and did what the French and the British could not do. In a few hours, they did what they couldn't do in years and cemented our reputation as elite troops.
Yeah, that's right.
And as well as giving us a sense of identity as Canadians.
And we actually were known as shock troops, who were placed in the front lines when a job had to be done and a difficult job had to be done, and we were there. And Germans would even get nervous when they knew that the Canadians were opposite them because they knew it wasn't going to be a good outcome for them.
Oh, yes. They were renowned for their trench raids and things like that.
Yeah.
So,
Dave, you got some great items here. What can you tell us about the individual who's represented here?
he served through from the time he was 17 until he was 19. And unfortunately, about a month and a half before the war ended, he was picked off by a sniper. He ended up with a bad leg wound and unfortunately passed.
Now, he was killed on September 28th. Is that correct? So that was, for historical perspective, that was the last 100 days, as you well know. It was, I believe, the 47th Battalion Diary mentions that the battle would have been the Canal du Nord, where he was killed. And that's a really interesting bit about him being picked off by a sniper. That's tragic. But yeah, a fascinating story. The last 100 days, of course, consisted of many battles up until 1918 when the armistice was signed. I think there were about 20,000 Canadian casualties at that point during the last 100 days. And really the German army was pushed back from beginning of August all the way to November 11th. There was firing going right up to that day.
Yeah.
So a tragic story, but fascinating time as well.
Yeah, it's just one of the many tragic stories coming from the First World War.
So Dave, you've brought these items for us today. It's a nice tight group of material that's pertinent to one individual, which we don't always see these days. What's your motivation for collecting these things?
I started collecting several years ago. For me, it was personal. Lost my father when he was young. He had just retired from the Navy. I have his uniforms and some of his collection certificates and things. For me, it became a way to remember my father. And when I started collecting and adding more things to the collection and collecting more stories, and people reached out, they had their own family stories and they wanted to see their loved ones remembered. So they would approach me with things, and the collection has grown and grown to where things like Fred has come into my collection and several other people, and it continues to grow. And for me, it's become a duty, I guess. They served for us. They sacrificed for us. They did their duty. So I feel it's only right we do our duty to them. So this is why I do this.
Dave, thanks for bringing all these things in. What were your plans for these items?
These items are going to go back into the display I have in Bridgewater, and eventually they'll find themselves traveling around to other museums and to schools. I think it's important that his story, as well as the stories of so many others, are related along to our youth, so they understand how our freedoms came to be.
Thanks for bringing these items in. I love your passion, and I think it's a great thing to be educating the youth like that. Fantastic, and good luck to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
I really enjoyed today's segment because I got to talk to Dave. Dave's a very passionate collector, and I just love the fact that he shares his passion with people.